All right. Hey everyone. Welcome to my first live stream. This is a supplemental for my prop design class, 260 School of Gaming Design. So welcome to everyone in that class. And if you're joining me outside of my class, welcome as well. So jumping in, I'm just going to go over some of our in-class exercise that we didn't get to. I basically tasked the class with using existing IP visual design and then using that visual language to redesign an existing object. For example, like a toaster, coffee maker, etc. So you can see here, I've basically referenced a whole bunch of concept art from various games and also animated movies. All right, so let's jump to what the class did. We did get a little bit into it, but didn't get to everyone. Okay, let's start with this first one here. It looks like the student chose this Paul Richards Quake 4 designs as the source of their design inspiration. Oops, actually, this is another reference I'm going to do for a demo later. Okay, so some very cool stuff happening in their design here using Paul Richards as kind of like a jumping point, right? And so that's their drawing. I'm just going to do some quick draw over of where I would push the design. As we mentioned in class, if I remember correctly, uh, one of our classmates did mention that they really enjoyed this flip handle doubling as that what do you call it, that slider knob for the toast, right? So I thought that was neat. I think there was also talk about adding more of these handle elements, right? Oops, actually I think I drew on the wrong layer. Okay, so handle. What I would push more in this particular design is maybe playing with the ins and outs, right? So I really like what they did here, and you know, it echoes a lot of what Paul is doing in his designs as well. Right, so I'm going to emphasize that even more. really like this space corner element, this little beveled angle. That's what I like to call it. Other places that I might push a bit too are these bolts, right? I'm feeling some of the angular lines are almost overpowering. So to balance it out, I might actually increase the scale of these space bolts. All right, and for the people watching, if you want to chime in the chat, yeah, feel free. All right, any questions? Whether you're taking the class with me or you're also just happen to be a YouTube observer. Right, some of this feels a little too undefined, right? So I'm gonna beef it up a little more. And the legs work out fine, right? I think they're pretty cool. And maybe for this, I'll also echo, some of the bends happening in these props. And yeah, the other thing I really like is in Paul's designs, there are panels and then there's little insets, right? So I might play that up as well. All right, and just to sell that it's part of the same universe as those crates, I'll maybe add a few more bolts, right? And I'm really glad they put this little tab here. It's kind of like a hint of how this prop is assembled. Okay, so I'm seeing a chat come in. Hey Brandon, how's it going? For the class, I trouble with the proportions of that design. Felt a little too bulky. I think the proportions feel okay, right? If you feel you're losing the toasterness of it, uh, slim down, right? See how that works out. Right? And another thing I notice is there's a lot of bigger angles, I guess. Inclines, declines, you know, really pushing that space corner, right? So I want to see if there's a way I can bring that into this toaster design as well. Rafa, if you're feeling that the proportions are getting a little lost, maybe I can extend it like so. Right, and it might be unorthodox to have this down angle on the toast slot, but this is just an exercise more in using design language versus true functionality, right? So you can suspend the uh, believability just a bit. Okay, so using Rafa and Paul's designs, I kind of tweaked it just a bit, and at least for this iteration, uh, pushed it to where I think it matches closer to Paul's visual language, right? And it might take a few more tries to really nail down the look. Uh, but yeah, having Rafa's designs and Paul's designs definitely makes it a little easier, right? And then this one, I figured maybe instead of being flushed, maybe I'll just extrude it, right? And it actually breaks that silhouette of that pop-out panel. All right. Oh, I see. Enigma, I3 Enigma. Hello. Are you a student in Prop 220 or just dropping in? Or 260? Sorry, keep forgetting the call numbers for that. All right. So a quick side by side of Rafa's original design based on Paul Richards' Quake designs. All right, so all right, so just a quick loose sketch. Uh, Definitely not the final be all of this design. And again, like I mentioned a lot in class, that a lot of design sensibilities and aesthetics are based on your own taste. Right, so maybe this design is cool, maybe not. But the more we'll iterate on it, the closer we'll get. Okay, let's take a look at the next person. Okay. And to anyone in my class that's tuning, I'll remember to bring this into class too, in case you want to take a look at some of the sketches. Okay, so this looks like an old school radio device thingy, and I believe it was based on this Megamind design from Goro Fujita. I like the direction that it's headed. I definitely would recommend approaching this exercise by thumbnailing in an isometric view of the prop, right? So that you can figure out the side and the front and the top of it all at the same time, right? Saves you some time having to figure out the orthographics. All right, so let's take a look. Say she or he. I believe this is shoot, Alexa, Alexis, right? Okay, so it's a speaker component, the knob, the legs. Okay, so the first thing, analyzing this Megamind concept sketch, there's a lot of nice uh, small, medium, and large elements going on. And here I feel it's a little too uniform. So I would probably push for more variety and scale of the items. Uh, this squiggliness, the shakiness, not this extreme, but uh, you can get a slight hint of it, right? So I'll try to carry that through as well, which naturally is happening here too. Just the nature of the sketching on the tablet, I guess. Okay. And I don't have to follow exactly this shape. Maybe I'll make it a little top heavy. I'll keep these cool elements that's happening there. And again, the reason why I suggest doing this first exercise in a 3D view is that you can figure out, is this a flushed surface or is it actually doing some kind of inset action right there, right? Like this is inset into that, and maybe this part is jumping out. So let's make it pop in a bit. Right, and then it looks like maybe this is the space for the mesh of the speakers, and then this is for the knob. Right, and I really like the variety of scale for these two buttons here. So maybe one's a button and the other one's a knob. Right, so nice scaling there. Right, so I think these reflect kind of like the borrowed design language from the spiky stuff. So I'll also carry it through here. And I'm gonna guess as to what these forms are doing in 3D. So I really dig how it's bowed here. So I'll keep that. And this is how I would handle this form in 3D. Wrap it towards the back. Alright, this is essentially my center line. I'm not striving too much for accuracy just yet. Right, we're still just in the preliminary design phases. Right, and let's see if I can do like a little flare, right, so that not everything is parallel. All right, so checking the chat. Oh, you're welcome, Rafa. All right. Oh, hey, Ty. Uh, no worries. Right, this is just supplemental lesson, really. So it's all voluntary. Right, this is the very first live stream for me. I'm just experimenting to see if this is useful for the class. And might as well also open it up to like kind of like I guess everyone on YouTube, just to give them like a sense of what we do in prop design class, and I mean in general, the games industry. All right, so the other side, I'm just gonna be a little more sloppy. It takes a little long to get these potato scallop things. All right, so I really like some of this mechanics going here, so I'm wondering if I can kind of replicate that. I'm going to keep the original handle design that this designer has going. And see if I can catch the character of this leg design that they have going also. Right, and I guess this stuff is supposed to be this, so let's throw that in, and it looks like they have it a little offset or off center. Right, and for the people in our props class that are watching, definitely let me know uh, on our Thursday meeting if you feel these sessions are helpful. Right, 3 hours is kind of fast to do demo, exercise, and then critique as well. Right, so I figured this might be a good way to go. Okay, right, some add that character line, and this has like a double wrap thing happening, right? So maybe I'll do that as well. All right, 2 down. Okay, coffee machine. Yeah, if I'm working on the prop that you did in class, definitely chime in if you have any questions. Okay, I'm guessing this one is based on this, maybe? The Chua furniture from Wildstar and Corey Loftus designed. Okay, so it looks like it's borrowing from this and this. Okay. So knowing the proportions that is used in this disc, I might push the same thing in this coffee maker. And for those of you in my class, if you remember, we talked about the minor axis of the ellipse. Great opportunity to put that into use. I like to turn the canvas a lot. It's just a better angle to draw sometimes. Okay. Okay. So this is good. They got the ellipses getting thinner and thinner as it gets closer towards the top. Right, and some of the design proportions are really interesting, right? Big tube, almost like hair thin pipe, something like that. So that's what I would push in this one as well. Right, and every elbow has this, giant junction. And maybe the connection point is a little more heftier. So I really like, the non-parallel angles that this person has here. So I'll keep that. Right, and this is a shallow angle. This is even more shallow. Right, so keep that. And if all your cylindrical objects and ellipses are centered, you can use that same minor axis to kind of plan all the ellipses. Right? So there's a lot of cool negative space going on in here. So I might want to push that as well. Right, I'm just looking at this part right here. And it looks like they threw in like a cross cylinder as well. All right, so my last problem that I probably need to solve is how to connect this upper coffee filter section to the base. Maybe I'll borrow this. And one of the things I noticed is that instead of just one or two turns, like Corey designed this with a lot of things jutting out, going different angles. So I'll do the same thing here, right? Instead of taking the pipe straight down, maybe I'll add an elbow before it completely plugs into the base. Right, and then I'll follow what the original artist did on their design and add some of these lower piping components. And that's pretty much it for this one, right? At least for the first iteration. Okay. Okay, next one is also a coffee maker. And we talked a little bit about this one in class. One thing, looking at this one now, I would say this mass and this mass very similar in proportions. um, I would say either emphasize one or the other, but don't give both equal billing. Right, so the skull looks cooler, so maybe I'll emphasize that. Right, and this was based on Darksiders design, these gauntlets, and I think the student took this extra image as their source of design inspiration. And I almost want to say, let's see, I don't know if that works or not. No, maybe not. We'll just keep the original intent. If I remember, I think one of the comments from a classmate was that this was not feeling in line with the visual language. Right? It's starting to feel a little too cartoon, right? So maybe I'll try to pull that back. And I think I also suggested playing around with some of the teeth flaring out, right? So it's not super flushed. All right, other things that we push is vertebrae, messing around with the scaling. Right? So maybe there's a large one, medium one, a small one, and also varying these individual vertebrae bones. Right? It's a really cool concept of having this as a coffee maker. Right? Other things I would push, because everything here flares out a lot, I want to see if I can do the same thing here. And do I want to indicate how this is actually attached? Right? Is there some kind of netting or something? Be careful that I don't make it too busy. Right? And that should do it for this one. All right. Next one. Okay, number 5. I think, okay, feels like another uh, Quake 4 influence design. Uh, Kept a lot of the feel of a traditional toaster, right? So it just varied that casing a bit. Uh, some of the things that I would actually bulk up are maybe elements like this little knob or switch, I guess. Right, this slider button. Okay. I would definitely think about also, uh, you know, where the design jumps in and out, right? Any panels that have like an inset, right, or an extrusion, and play that up. Right, so maybe that's recessed in there. All right, one thing that I didn't cover in our first class was the ergonomics of drawing. right? Everyone has a nice optimal angle for drawing like straight lines or circles or something like that. And yeah, always turn the canvas if it helps you to draw more accurate lines. Okay, so two things I might do here. I might either add more height to the toaster or narrow it down a bit, just just to bring back that classic toaster feel, right, proportion wise. So it looks like this has some asymmetry going on, right? So one side is not exactly the same as the other. Right? And I'm saying that this little chunk down here is actually also recessed. You know, maybe this one's doing something like this. Okay, so actually borrow some design elements for this handle. I might take out this cylinder here just to preserve this silhouette, right? Right, and these kind of elements here, I would say totally play it up, right? It almost feel like an afterthought, right? So instead of just it being at this scale, what if I bring it in and make it a little more chunkier? Right? And then everything else up here feels pretty good, right? So I'm just going to trace over. And actually might move this in closer a bit. Right? And this part right here, is it a recurring design motif that I can bring to the side as well? And this is pretty cool too. Let's see. Maybe I'll resolve it like so. And give it a recessed panel in there. All right. And then lastly, these tiny little bolt details. Right, and here, give it a little more real estate too. Just so you know, maybe that it's meant to be a control button versus, say, like a fastening bolt or something. All right, okay. Down. Okay. Okay, number 6. I'm gonna guess Darksiders water cooler. Okay, let me bring back some of this reference. Okay. Again, right? Like for my demo, maybe I was a little bit too stuck to the original shape. But for some of these other organic shapes, I would suggest just breaking that boundary even more, right? You don't need to worry about sticking in that like rectilinear silhouette too much. All right, and what elements can I borrow? Okay, so maybe these type of banding, uh, this ring. Right, so boom, just a minor axis for all my cylinders. Right, is it just a straight up like bottle silhouette or that 5-gallon jug silhouette, or do I add just a slight bit more complexity to it? You know, trying to echo that little jewel in that gauntlet, right, in the Infinity Stone. Okay, I feel that jug is competing a bit with the facade in terms of scale. So maybe do something like this. And really, there's no question that this facade, the skull, is the star of the show. All right, so a cool little lake design element there. And then I'll just borrow that. And one thing I have to figure out, I guess maybe the ergonomics is way off here, but these canine teeth are the hot and cold dispenser buttons. All right. Looking back at the chat, let's see. Gotcha. Thanks, Brandon. Sure. You're welcome, Enigma. Okay, so this is way looser, right? Since I'm kind of designing on the fly. And do I want to do something like this? Okay, not everything has to be conveniently aligned. Right, and maybe there's a loop here for those paper triangles, disposable cups. Okay, so just a quick pass on this. Okay. Excuse me. All right. I think we mentioned a little bit of the toothbrush last week. But again, for this one, the massing is starting to compete. So, right, like even this and this feels a little similar. Right, we talked about ergonomics and usability in class. So this goes out the window right here, right? If you hold this, you might have a pretty good chance of hurting your hand. But we're just worried about visual design and not so much about usability yet. Right, we had talked about focal point in design first week. So definitely, what's the star component of this toothbrush? Right? Is it this spiky tail end, or maybe the bristle head? Right, I would also play up on some of this banding that you see a lot in all of these gauntlets. Right, so instead of just this big flat shape, I want to see if there's a way I can add a layer of design complexity to it. Maybe there's a little catch before the bristles start. Alright, so the more and more that I'm drawing this, I'm definitely leaning towards the bristle as the focal design point. Alright, so this is set for this first version. I would say these two are pretty similar with the exception of this. So let's go to this third one. Alright, definitely can tell that that's the focal point. Right, so I'll play up this element here. Right, everything here just has one transition, right? Meaning one object shoved into the next. So one of the things you notice about these Darksider gauntlets is that there's a lot of a layering going on, right? So that's something that I want to see if I can capture as well. Right, so instead of just a box typed into another box, I want to see, is there a design opportunity to transition from one to the next. Right, and maybe there's like a band there and another band. Right, and then this really cool hook element. Is there a sleeve that it pinches into before it connects to the main body? Right, and I really have to decide on what the main theme is for this handle. And I guess now that I'm drawing it, I'm gonna say, is this banding? Alright, so again, just add hints of a band, and then the bristles. Alright, let's jump into the next one. Again, definitely feel free to chime in with any questions. I'm running out of steam here. Been chatting for quite a while. Okay, another Darksiders influence here, number 8. I think it's Darksiders, right? So I believe in class we had talked about emphasizing the scale of this toaster switch, right? The slider knob. So let's just pull that. Uh, One of the things I really enjoy about this design are these facades, these gargoyles. The other part I might consider pushing more is, you notice how all these silhouettes have a really nice positive, negative space in and out silhouette, right? I want to see beyond these faces. Can I also push that in the other body panels too? And one of the things that I mentioned about line is it forces you to really resolve all the design components. Right? Before I nail some of the forms, I probably would suggest avoiding to going into tone. And again, that's just my personal workflow. And so maybe something like this, right? And one thing here, right? Everything, even though there's a nice in and out, for the most part, I want to see if I can push the silhouette even more. And in this case, it's going in this, um, guessing it's the Z axis, right? So you think about 3D, X, Y, Z. Right? So some really fun stuff happening here. So I'm not really changing too much. I'm just remixing what's there, right? And the jaw itself, can I jut it out a bit? Right, so this part, it's really pushed in. It's way under. All right. So that's what I was stressed there. Everything else feels pretty good, right? All the ins and outs, right? In interior insets, extrusions. So I noticed another design opportunity, right? This is starting to have all sorts of ins and outs in the silhouette. The toast slot itself presents me with another opportunity to maybe play up that Darksiders feel a little bit more by messing with that rectangular shape, right? So there's some sharp edges. Is it gonna pinch your toast? Yeah, maybe. But again, we're just designing mainly for looks. Okay, I think I need to buy a more silent keyboard. Okay, so everything else I'll probably leave as is. Yeah, there's a lot of nice little design touches here and there. Okay. All right, looks like a lot of fans of the Darksider look. This looks like a water pot, hot water pot maybe, uh, or just kind of like what would you call it? Old school coffee brew. Okay. This feels pretty good, right? Uh, not too much I would do to this one, right? The only thing I might consider doing is pushing some of the angles a little bit more, right? Like really lean that skull shape a little bit downwards. I'm guessing you would probably hold the back of the horn, maybe, to pour. All right, nice touch on redesigning the spout. And this is something this designer started to approach. We'll talk a little bit more next session, but throwing in kind of like these accent details, it's a really nice touch, right, to balance out the small, medium, and large shapes. I really enjoy that faceted feel of this design. And just like the contrast between some of the rounder, more organic shapes, versus this more geometrical, I guess it would be like an octagon. Uh, One thing as I'm drawing this, my own personal thought is that I may add a leg component to balance it a bit. It's starting to feel a little top heavy, so I'm introducing this negative space underneath to kind of balance out all this solid mass up top. And I might bleed out the leg design outside the silhouette as well. And let's see, still feels a little off balance. All right, so there's that one. All right, and I'm really getting a kick out of all of these designs. So kudos on that, everyone. Okay, Darksiders Teapot. Okay. All right. So a lot of these tinier details are starting to compete with each other and this facade. So again, there's no doubt in my mind that this should be the focus. Right, and since I'm going organic, I want to see how far I can push the asymmetrical aspect of it. Right, not everything has to be this perfect symmetrical feel. Right, so maybe in between these bigger vertebrae, there's these tinier knuckle vertebrae. And I want to see if I can integrate, the lid, the open area of the lid into this facade a little bit more, right? So it feels like it's a part of it and you're just not slicing through. All right, again, I'm avoiding even parallels, right? So even this spout, I'll make it a little wider where it connects, and it tapers a little bit at the front. All right, these claw things are a nice touch as well. I might minimize them just a bit proportion wise so that they don't steal the thunder too much from the top areas. Right, and do I want to introduce any banding elements? See if it works. All right. Yeah, so this one was pretty cool, right? I didn't do too much to it. I just remixed the scaling of certain elements, right, to balance it out a little bit more. Okay, so coming down to the last one. All right, these were Pong's, I believe. He posted it on our Facebook page. Um, Out of the two, I think they're using the same Quake 4 as the design point, reference point. Uh, this one, I think, is the one that I'm going to do a quick draw over of. Okay, so again, I would say definitely feel free to break beyond the confines of your source everyday item, right? This is pretty much everything's flushed. Same here, right? I mean, you got a space corner, but for the most part, everything is still pretty flushed. And that's where I would push to break that silhouette, right? So here, maybe I'll add one of these. Right, just take that in. Okay, I'm looking at the source shape, and you know, this is something that, to me at least, doesn't show up in any of its corner shapes. It always has at least a little thickness, right, before it terminates. Right, so these are really cool touches. And let me see here. So here is where I will play with, you know, uh, taking that shape in, right, extruding it in, so that there's a little uh, recessed area. And I want to see if I can bring some of these handle elements here, which maybe in this context might make sense. Right? There's some kind of wardrobe, space wardrobe. All right, as we're closing in on critiquing everyone's in-class exercise. Does anyone want to see like another visual design remix demo, or do you guys want to call it a night? So I got 11:48. Not sure if you guys got morning classes. Chime in on the chat. I'm feeling okay. I think I got a little more steam left. Okay. See a question from Rafa. Question when you are done. If you have some time, I'm trying to design toasters with TF2. Look, but I'm stuck. Tie. It would be cool to see you design something from WoW. Okay. Blood troll test. So everything else in this wardrobe, you know, feels pretty sweet. Right? The only thing, again, I would push for is more of these in, out, you know, feeling. Right? Everything here still feels pretty flushed. I mean, there's like some here and there, but for the most part, everything is fairly flushed. Alright, so I'll do that. And let me see here. Okay, I think those are actually some kind of door panels. Right, and the last thing I would do to really match the Paul Richards stuff, potentially throw in some panels and bolts. Over, does it make sense? So maybe something like that. And yeah, maybe some small micro details. Right? All right. Okay, so that's all 11. Okay, so let's see. All right, let's do a quick Team Fortress toaster, and then we'll jump into the Warcraft one, and then maybe call it a night. Okay, so the first thing I noticed about this, I mean, there's a lot of TF2 reference out there too, as well, Rafa. But if you're using mainly this one, I would opt for going for kind of like a retro toaster, right? Very curvy shape, right? You know, a lot of radius edges as opposed to more angular. Right? So since this is a pretty big component, maybe I'll borrow from that. Right? There's a little overlap there. Right? And then it's curvy, and then it's got this little boxy element shoved in, right? So maybe that's where I'll borrow as well. I'm trying to see what I can borrow or steal for that slider knob. Um, not getting too. Oh, yeah, maybe this little bolt thing on the side here. Right, so that can be my toast slider button. And Rafa, I would also suggest if you get a little bit blocked on toasters, try another household item, right? Maybe that'll clear up your mind a bit and get you into a nice new design mindset, right? And I'll just straight off rip that for the base legs. Optionally, I can also use that. Right, and some micro details are those venting slots on the side. And let's see, there's some banding that I can maybe add to get another layer of design complexity. All right, so does this help out, Rafa? Does this answer your question? these slots are bolted on, right? Like this right here. All right. Okay. Cool. I might squat that a little bit. Actually, it feels a little bit too tall. Okay. All right. So Ty, is he trying to design a blood troll chest? Let me look up blood troll. So I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that I haven't played WoW. I know a little bit about the art style, but as far as like all the factions, no clue. Okay, looking up the concept art. Actually, Ty, could you please send me a link to kind of like, I guess, the blood troll design language that you're going after? Okay, let's see. I found something here. I'm wondering if this is the blood troll that you're mentioning. Okay. So if I had to try to nail down some of the design components that's unique to the blood trolls, first I would say it's these, glyphs, I guess, the motif. Uh, the next thing, these look like army dog tags, right? Uh, the skull thing, right? The motif, blood, right? Okay, animal bone, little skull trinkets, and maybe the cloth itself too, right? Metal bands. Okay, first thing, So I'm not sure what you've got going for the silhouette of the chest yet, but let's say you have the generic silhouette, right? Color-wise, right away, I would do that whole blood gradation thing, right? So, right, so you got this blood-soaked bottom fading to the top, right? Whatever that is, right? Any of these metal components, I would say it's an opportunity to use as the banding, right? The metal band that makes up your chest uh, or holds it together, right? So not sure how to approach the leg design yet. Right, okay. Right, so the skull thing seems like a good design opportunity. Right? And two out of the three have this surprise eyes look versus that mean frown. Right? How much do I extrude? Like how much does this actually protrude out from the chest? Right? And I want to see if I can work in these horn elements, right, as handles. Right? So the tough part, I think, is how do I attach those horns? Right? How do I resolve that aspect? I mean, it's a pretty realistic style, so you can't get away too much with things that don't look like they work. Right? So does this whole thing open up with the upper chest door or lid? Right? And what's the locking mechanism? Right? Is it, can I use that dog tag thing? Right? This is I mean, that's a pretty boring chest silhouette, I think. You know, so I want to see where else I could potentially push it. Right? And do I drape cloth over it with their squiggles? Right? That two snake tail thing, and then a chevron, diamond, right? Or is that maybe just painted onto the chest? right? So I mean that would be my starting point. Um, beyond that, I really would love to take a look at what you have going on so far for the form of that chest, that underlying chest in general, right? Is it like that? Is it, you know, more like a house, right, with that angle top? Does it have legs? No legs, right? So that's what I would ask you for next session if you want to start like early brainstorming for this guy. Right, does that answer your question, Ty? Okay, I am running out of steam. I feel like my my voice is starting to go a bit. So let's call it a night. I'll see everyone on Thursday. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Those from my class and anyone that might be just out there in YouTube land. Very first stream. So thanks again for watching. All right. Have a good night, all.